Hello everyone, Dr. Shabazz here, and I'm going to be covering some material today, Chapter 10, Chapter 11, and get into this idea of branding. Chapter 11 is titled Product Concepts, Branding, and Packaging. And so I'll talk about that, but I'll begin talking about Tuesday. We had a guest, Courtney Larverdane, who came to us from a social media company that she created. And you may remember the post that I put up introducing Courtney. And this is her LinkedIn. So if you didn't get a chance to reach out to her, make sure you do that because I think it's important when you start talking about networking. And I know there were a couple of you who spoke on Tuesday about getting into social media and you asked for tips. And that's a great thing. And she gave us some of those tips. And one of the tips that she gave at the end was getting a YouTube channel. And her advice was that no matter what you put on it, just get one and begin to build the content. And you probably can see the value of the self-branding project. The idea of using your resume as a snapshot to know where you are and also to have a mission where you want to go. So you've got kind of a timeline that you can draw in between where you are now and where you're going. And of course, part of that is going to be your personal branding, your marketing, your social media, which has become a part of all of our lives, whether we like it or not. And so Courtney gave us some tips about looking at our social media mix, the IG or Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Snapchat. And she says we should be on all of them. But the subtlety is that we treat each one differently. For example, all of you had LinkedIn pages that were required as part of your self-branding project. And some of the comments that I put was make sure you populate your page. That's very important to be able to populate it. The other good thing about LinkedIn is you can add other types of content. You can add papers that you have written. If you're an academic like me, I have my dissertation up there as well. You can put links to other multimedia content, maybe speeches you've given, and also it's really a good place if you're in the market looking for a particular type of job. Then it's also a good place for looking for jobs and of course networking. So Courtney was a very good good guest in terms of giving a testimony as far as her success at Florida A&M and of course SBI. So this idea of digital media, digital marketing, or e-marketing, or internet commerce. I actually wrote a paper years ago about e-marketing. This is the paper. It was in Services Marketing Quarterly, I believe was the name of it. And we're talking, and with the time I wrote this paper, it had to be the early 2000s. But my dissertation was finished in 1998. And that was at a time where the internet was 95. You had a lot of businesses, including Amazon was created around that time. And there were a lot of other companies like eBay that were rising. And people were scratching their heads trying to figure out how is this thing going to work. Nobody knew how to exploit is not a good word, but they didn't know how to um, operationalize the internet because they're thinking, oh, what's this technology? How do we build a platform on the internet that can make good economic sense for us? And so that was the thing that companies were trying to figure out in the late 90s and early 2000s. And in the early 2000s, there was a crash because many of the ideas between the mid 90s and the early 2000s were these pipe dreams of making up the next big thing or making the next big thing. And a lot of venture capitalists were rolling their dice and they were taking their chances and they were throwing money at all of these businesses. Many of these businesses folded. One of the businesses that was also part of this dot-com era was called GovWorks. There's a documentary that I usually show in my classes, particularly the marketing classes, because it's a case of entrepreneurship. And this documentary, as you can see the image on the background, was something that I would give to my class, and just I would ask them a few questions as far as an assignment. And it's interesting because as time went on, a lot of students would say, well, why didn't they try this? Why didn't they try that? Well, that's because that concept wasn't invented then. And it's very easy to look at something in hindsight at a company and say, well, they did that wrong. They should have done that. They would have been better off doing this, doing less of this, more of that. And that's essentially what you had in this company called GovWorks. So here you have the two of the founders. There was actually a third founder who was not featured prominently in the documentary, but you have Kalel on the left and you have Tom on the right. They were two of the founders. Here they are sitting in an office of a venture capitalist. They're trying to raise money for the company. And this documentary, startup.com, is a textbook case of the challenges of entrepreneurship. And this, and I was telling Tom is on the right, I actually had a conversation. This is me, chess drummer here. And so a conversation ensued based upon the comment that I posted. And so Tom Herman chimes in. Now, this is 4 weeks ago, and I just discovered when I watched the video again, I discovered that he had responded. So then I started communicating to him in my real name. And so now he's responding. And so what happened after that? He ends up reaching out to me and connecting on LinkedIn. So this is Tom Herman here. And I'm telling him that I'm, use the documentary for my classes. And he says, oh, if you have a need for me to speak to your classes, by all means, let me know. And I'll be glad to come through. And so I'm thinking about that. I'm thinking about having the class watch the movie startup.com and then have Tom Herman to come and talk about his experience with the business. And at that time, the .com companies were beginning to take off. Bear in mind, folks, a lot of these companies, the ones that survived, lost money, including Amazon. Amazon lost money for 10 years before it turned a profit. And Jeff Bezos is now the richest man in the world. Go figure that. Now, it's interesting that when I was doing my research and looking at all of these things taking place and trying to also understand what all this meant, I found that a lot of people thought that the internet was just a tool. It was just a tool like anything else. But I looked at it, and when I was doing my dissertation, I was trying to explain to some people who would listen. I did a lot of presentations, and many people just could not understand. They could not understand. How can you make this an economic engine? Well, 20 years later, we understand how that was done. But before I go on, I want to just tell you a few things about the internet itself. And we probably take it for granted because we get on every day and we're doing all types of research and we're looking up things and we have our different sites that we go to. Well, the internet actually started out as a project out of the Department of Defense, because what had happened in the 1950s, this was the late 1950s, the Soviet Union and the United States were gripped in a battle, and you all know it's called the Cold War. And they were trying to determine whose system was going to win out. And so they had this debate going on, and in 1957, the Soviet Union launched a satellite into space.
Here's a look at this day in history. October 4th.
On this day in 1927, the sculptor Gutzon Borglum began his monumental work at Mount Rushmore. This day in 1965 saw Pope Paul VI arrive in New York, the first pope to visit the U.S. On this day in 2002, Richard Reed pleaded guilty to attempting to blow up a transatlantic jetliner with explosives in his shoe. And on this day in 1957, the Soviet Union launched Sputnik 1. The volleyball-sized orb was the first man-made object in space designed to collect data on the upper layers of the atmosphere. But it did much more. It launched the U.S. into a competitive race to conquer space. And that's this day in history.
And it took the U.S. government by surprise because they didn't think they were that far behind. But the Soviet Union launched a satellite, and it also alarmed the U.S. government because they thought, well, what if they armed that satellite with missiles? What if they use some type of weaponry or weaponize the satellite? And so they started thinking that if that satellite was weaponized and they hit major arteries in our society, then that would be very problematic, of course. So the Department of Defense began to fund this research on this redundant network, such that if a missile would strike a major artery, information artery, then that information would still move around that part of the network, and it would end up in the wherever it was to be sent. And so this was the Department of Defense, called the DARPA. And in fact, I have a history of the internet here, brief history of the internet. And I remember when I was doing my dissertation, I used to be a part of the Internet Society, which is where this description of the internet is found. And here you can see the origins of the internet. They're talking about 1962, where one of the architects called it a galactic network. And there you can see DARPA. That was a research agency funded by the Department of Defense. And here you have the packet switching theory. What is packet switching? Packet switching is the idea that in information, that a block of information or data that is sent from one node to another will break into packets. Each packet has an address and a destination on it, so that when all those packets move around various branches of the network, then it would go to the recipient and it would reassemble. So you had all these packets that would get to its destination. The beauty of that was that it was hard to intercept, so that it would, of course, get to the destination. And even if one of the packets was missing, then that system was smart enough to resend the missing packet, such that you won't know, as an end user, you won't know what you won't be able to see this. It's happening, at light speed. So packet switching was a novel concept, and then you had the ARPANET, 1966. Roberts went to DARPA to develop the computer network concept and quickly put together his plan for the ARPANET, publishing it in 1967. So these were the origins of the internet as far as the structure of it, the architectural structure and the computers and the paths to the network. So these were the origins. Now, if you go forward, let's say you go forward 20 years. In the late 1980s, there was research happening at the CERN lab in Switzerland. Tim Berners-Lee, who was a scientist there at the CERN lab, decided and conceived of having a graphical user interface on top of this internet, interconnected networks. But he also created this concept of hypertext transfer protocol that will allow you to get from one computer on that network to another point of the network using this hypertext transfer protocol. And with that, you had a layer on top of the interconnected networks that had a graphical user interface. Now, of course, you still had to be a techie in order to know how to navigate that system. But this graphical user interface helped make the navigating the network a lot easier. And I was trying to find a picture of Tim Berners-Lee because I think it's important to actually see these people too. You can hear their names, but it's also important to see them. So this is Tim Berners-Lee, and he is the inventor of the World Wide Web that we see at the beginning of our web addresses. They have he has a Wikipedia page, which is pretty detailed. Wikipedia is getting a lot better than it had been in terms of the quality of information you can find there. Here's Tim Berners-Lee again, web inventor and founding director of the World Wide Web Foundation. Later on, in 1990, 95, there were scientists at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, led by Mark Andreessen. They were graduate students, and they put together the idea of a web browser. And this web browser would then allow users to traverse the internet in a graphical way using Tim Berners-Lee's protocols of HTTP. And I remember using the internet in those days. It was called the Mosaic, was the first browser, and it was very slow. It was in the initial stages. But it was one of those things that when you were using it, you knew that it's something, it was going to be leading to something else special. And I saw it happen. I saw the internet blossom. When I was a computer scientist, I used to use the internet, but it was a very cryptic way that you had a command line and you had to type these very cryptic commands to find resources that you needed from another computer. But Tim Berners-Lee HTTP protocol and World Wide Web, and then you put the browser on top of that, now you're able to find information with ease. So these were the early days of the internet, and they were I shouldn't say the internet itself, but these were the early days of this idea of the World Wide Web, being able to find things and using the World Wide Web as an economic platform. In my study of the internet, I knew that it was going to be a game changer, but I couldn't get other people to understand how the internet could be used for economic interest or for companies. And so it was with that I did a lot of presentations, and I actually did this paper some years ago. This paper was done in 2004. So it's been a while since I wrote this paper. And if you look at the abstract, now this is after the crash, the dot-com crash, which involved the GovWorks, which was Tom and Kalel's company, but involved that company as well as hundreds of others. But in my abstract, I talk about the importance of this new platform. In the dot-com boom, many companies were racing feverishly to build online platforms for their core businesses. Some built online channels to improve efficiency, while others built them merely to keep pace with their competition. In the early days, millions of dollars were wasted on ill-conceived e-marketing campaigns which promised to increase the flow of traffic to company websites. The results were mediocre, and after the dot-com fallout, many companies slashed their online ad budgets drastically. Was e-marketing overhyped, or was it merely the widespread acceptance of poorly executed e-marketing strategies? This paper argues that e-marketing remains an important aspect of creating a viable online channel for business. The online channel and its components has undergone a natural cycle of evolution indicated by its quick rise, its precipitous fall, and gradual resurgence. With improved technology and a more mature web audience, companies are able to target more precisely and increase the interactivity between the web users and the ads they create. The web will become one of the biggest medium for conducting commercial transactions, and e-marketing will emerge as a dominant factor in the ever-changing global economy. So it seems like I was onto something, because that's exactly where we are now in terms of the online platform and social media and how much we use it. And Courtney Laverdane just laid it out very nicely in terms of the benefits of these tools that we now use for many, many different things. Some social, some for business, some as a consumer. And so what I'll do now is I'll begin talking about some of the concepts in digital marketing and social networking. So let's see what we have here. Hopefully we can make quick work of this and move on to chapter 11. So we already know digital media, all these devices that we have now. Digital marketing, we know that firsthand. And of course, e-marketing, which was an early phraseology where you had E in front of everything. And It says, the book says, the strategic process of distributing, promoting, and pricing products and discovering the desires of customers using digital media and digital marketing. One of the things that happened in the early days, because I used to teach a class called E-Business for Global Markets, was that there was a changing of paradigms. You had a paradigm shift in economics, a paradigm shift in marketing, the idea that you had unlimited supply and you could get products cheaply by using shopping agents, and you can get your products customized. These were all very cutting edge things. And you can get things that you wanted that perhaps were not in your immediate location. And so all of these things made this platform a very, I would say, important platform for business. Now, there was an argument early on that will the online companies overtake brick and mortar companies? That was actually an issue, and people debated this and wrote papers about it. But I believe the benefits that you see here have certainly helped us to gain the value proposition of the internet. You have convenience. You have, obviously, in some instances, you have more cost-effective solutions. You have the fact that you don't necessarily have to get in your car and go to a store across town in order to receive that product. We know that very well through Amazon. But these were, again, very cutting edge times. I remember when Twitter was created. I remember when Facebook was created. YouTube, Google. I remember when Google, I was in graduate school when Google was created, and that just became the thing. You didn't use Alta Vista anymore. You didn't use Yahoo. You started to use the Google search engine, and they had these cool ads on the side, and it grew to where it is today. These are covering some of the benefits, the idea that you have these value propositions, some distinguished from the traditional media, as you can see at the bottom, interactivity, and perhaps 24/7. You have a time element there, that you have access to things on a 24-hour clock. Connectivity and control, I mean, these are all attributes. And this is how they break them down. The characteristics of online media, the benefits, the value propositions are all here. So here we go with social media. Involves establishing communications with consumers through social media websites. In the early days, social media was just about someone with 140 characters talking about what they're doing today. Oh, I just came from the restaurant and I'm eating a sandwich, or I got this nice smoothie, or it was things that were relatively trite. They were insignificant. But then you started to see people become more savvy in its deployment and using Twitter. And then you got companies involved, and they thought, well, this is a way that I can reach mass quantities of my customers and potential customers. So again, it became this platform. Besides, you have four ways of four distribution channels. And the battle of the day was that, were online companies going to put physical stores out of business? In some industries, it did. You look at Borders, the bookstore. You look at Barnes & Noble, Books A Million. These are all companies that are struggling because of the Amazon juggernaut, touting to be the world's largest bookstore. What else do we have here? They talk about social networking. Here they have some demographics. As you can see, the younger population is more engaged with social media than the older generation. I think we already knew that. The most popular social networking site in the world is Facebook. Perhaps. I don't know when this stat was pulled from the resource, but certainly it's still a major player when you talk about, especially what's going on now with the politics. But yeah, it's a place we like to hang out, and we like to share, and we like to see what others are doing. And yeah, it's been a very successful company. Twitter. I just talked about Twitter. It was very silly early on, but then people got more savvy and they understood the value of Twitter. And now we can't do without it. It's a wonderful tool. You use it like a ticker tape, or you use it to put up announcements about new products. And you use it for SGA campaigns. You use it for just getting news and information. And you also use it to send out information, as President Trump often does. Snapchat is running through YouTube. This is, Courtney says, to get a channel. And then I guess that's what we need to do. LinkedIn. Blogs and wikis. So I have a blog. I have a website, and it has a blog in it. And these are, it says web-based journals. Yeah, you can look at it as a journal, but there's serious journalism that is done on blogs. It's not just a journal like you're saying anything you want. No, you're talking about news of the day, and it might be political commentary, especially now. And while people don't read as much as they used to, it is still a very good resource for finding out a variety of subjects. And you all know about these concepts, media sharing sites. And you talk about, well, YouTube is one, but you have the big one now is Spotify. Spotify is a huge, it is a huge success. There was I don't know what you call this. It wasn't a commercial, but it was a short documentary on Spotify going to a country, and what was unique was that the people that they were tracking were deaf. They couldn't hear. And so how do you hear the music that Spotify offers? But it was a very beautiful, just a very touching commercial that they made. It wasn't it was like a documentary. But yeah, these companies are on top of their game, but they won't be around forever. You'll have some, like Snapchat is relatively new, and you have many others that have been around longer, but of course Snapchat is enjoying great success. Mobile marketing, we know, on your phone, an alert comes up. So sell at whatever store you like. It's right in the area. You might decide to go there and pick up a few things. Here's how smartphones are used. You all know about apps and widgets. And here are the metrics. I used to follow these metrics very closely on my website. Page visits and hits and click-throughs and all of these things that you see. And some are not as pertinent as they once were. things like page visits and hits. They used to say hits. And that can be the same person hitting your page many times as opposed to a unique user. So these types of metrics were always taken, looked at very carefully. Very interesting story here. When I was doing my dissertation, and it's just after 10, so I'm in good shape. When I was doing my dissertation and doing the research I was doing on the West African region, the big thing of that day in the mid-1990s was that Africa needed to ensure that it had access to technology. So there were a number of initiatives of different developers and organizations wanting to wire Africa, massive continent. And this went on for many years. And then the cell phone came. So what did the cell phone do? The cell phone was now a tool that instead of having the landline phone, you now can use your handheld. And at one time, cell phone penetration had the greatest upward trajectory in the world, in Africa. I was a member of Napster. I got on there and allowed people access to music I had in my folder and vice versa. And this Napster was created by a 16-year-old named Sean Fanning, who said in an interview that he stayed up 2 days writing the code for Napster. So what happened was that there was an injunction filed on Napster, and they had to take down the site because it was the entertainment company's notion that Napster was allowing illegal activity. The way Napster worked is you downloaded it and you would specify which folder on your computer where you would keep your music that others can draw from. And so you would specify a folder and somebody types something and then a list of songs come out, and let's say yours is there. You click on it, it begins to download that file from your computer. Now bear in mind, when you download online in those days, sometimes you might get half a song. Sometimes the sound wasn't good. Sometimes there was interference in the background. And so in these cases, you certainly would be better off through going through official channels. But I said that to say that there was a situation that occurred with eBay. eBay was allowing people to sell bootleg CDs, the best of whatever the artist's name was. So eBay was told that they had to have more stringent rules about what is actually sold on their sites in terms of the auctions, because basically people were counterfeiting CDs, the best of Beyonce, for example, and they would have all of her songs on this CD, and they would sell it on eBay. And so they had to stop that from happening for obvious reasons. But when all this was happening, there was a company that was laying in the cut looking at all this. And that company was Apple. They had the iPod device, they had the iTunes. No physical download. You just download the song, right? And you have your enjoyment. But since then, you have all these other music sites, delivery sites that have come out. Okay, so I'm going to begin talking about Chapter 11, Product Concepts, Branding, and Packaging. Very interesting. And I'm going to try to do this in the next 20 minutes or so. That will put us at about an hour. And or more. So let's try to get through this as quick as possible. So what is a product? So you go through this. What is a product? Product is a good, a service, or an idea received in an exchange. Now, on this slide, you also see total product offered three independent elements: the core product, its supplemental features, its symbolic and experiential benefits. Now, in another textbook, it describes the layers of the product concept, which is the core product, which are the basic benefits, the actual, which is how it looks and its features, and augmented is the outer layer, which is when you start talking about warranty, maintenance plans, delivery, credit, and all the things that it takes to sweeten the deal, so to speak. And so, of course, you have products, which can be goods, services, going to get your hair cut, going to the beautician, going to take salsa lessons, going to get a massage, going to get your nails done. All of these things are considered services. And then you have your ideas, which are also under that category. So here's the core, main benefit, supplemental features, which is the tangible features that you could actually discern, that you could actually see. You can see the benefits in the core. They like to use the automobile, but in this case, they gave you a variety of things: free installation, guarantees, product information, delivery, training, financing. Now, in the model that I just read to you, that would be under augmented. This would be under supplemental, would be under augmented. But they've done it slightly different here. So you have these YouTube videos of people giving commentary on products that they like, being social media influencers, which is, very interesting because people are making livings now, just getting endorsements from companies. The company will send them free products to review online, and it's very, very interesting phenomena we find now. Classifying products. Either you have consumer products, we talk about B2C, or business products, B2B. Businesses buy from businesses. Categories of consumer products: convenience products, then shopping products. You need a little bit more information, because here they have appliances, bicycles, furniture, stereos, cameras, and shoes. Those are all relatively expensive, depending on what kind of shoes you buy. But certainly, you talk about furniture and appliances, those can be pretty pricey. Specialty products, fine jewelry, limited edition collector's items, wine, certain types of cars. These are all specialty items. Certain types of foods. Unsought products, products purchased to solve a sudden problem. One of the unsought products that is mentioned in the last book we used was the life insurance and funeral services. For example, you might have your wife or your husband passed away, and you buy a plot because you say, I want to be buried next to him, so you buy that plot in advance. And so that's become a very interesting market, but that would be considered an unsought product. Business products, I believe we have an idea of this. FAMU being what the type of organization it is. These are things that we see happening with regard to dorm living and having need for certain types of equipment installed in the buildings. Product line versus product mix. What is the difference? We know what a product item is. What is a product line? It's goes the whole length of a product category. So let's say you have laundry detergent, and then under detergent you have all of these names of laundry detergents under that. That may be a product line. A product mix may mean the different categories: laundry detergent, food and beverage, clothing, industrial products. Those might be the categories. Then the product line is underneath the categories. You have a certain width of the product mix, and you have a certain depth. Some products don't have many options, but they have in terms of variations, but they may have many different models, just not many variations of the same model. So there you have the width versus the depth. And here you have it depicted here, the laundry. Then you have all the laundry items below that. And across you have the product categories or the product mix. Here's the product life cycle. The product life cycle is introduction, growth, maturity, decline. I like to refer to it as IGMOD because that's the acronym of introduction, growth, maturity, decline. And you will notice that every product has a life cycle. And obviously, if it's perishable, it's going to have a life cycle. But even things that are durable, like your cell phones, have a lifespan. Your computer has a lifespan. Your car has a lifespan. The clothes we wear have a lifespan. And that lifespan goes through 4 stages. It's introduced. When interest is peaked and people begin to learn about it, then the demand increases, it grows, it matures, it levels off, and then it begins to decline. So remember IGMOD. That's an important point to important acronym. And they give you the breakdown here. Now that curve is going to look different based upon what products you're selling. You're in Tallahassee, you're an entrepreneur, and you know when May comes, students go. So what happens is you have to make up the lost revenue from the students leaving and going home for the summer or going to internships. But typically in a market like this, you have a cyclical product life cycle. It goes down in the summer, comes back up, goes down, comes back up. You have some product life cycles that go up suddenly and then come down as fast as it ascended. Fads, different trends that come in style and then go out of style. But it's incumbent upon the maker of that product to ensure that when you're going through this product life cycle, when you get to maturity, you're having to improve as you go along and hopefully delay the decline and ensure that decline levels, that the maturity does not level off into a decline. You continue to make improvements. Here you have the product adoption process, the awareness, interest, evaluation, trial, and adoption. This can come in various speeds. I mentioned to you that I was in a store and I was going through the aisles and I saw some samples of chips, Red Hot Blues I mentioned. But I went through this adoption process so quickly that I was aware of the product because it was sitting there. I was interested because it looked interesting bag. I evaluated, I tried it, adopted immediately. And I continued to do that for the next several weeks. And even to this day, I actually have Red Hot Blues right in my kitchen. So That adoption process is real, folks. Then you have the different types of adopters. How many of you all are innovators? You got to get the latest iPhone. You got to get the latest, um, athletic gear. These are things that, if you're an innovator, you'll wait in line for hours just trying to get the latest model of something or the latest shoes. I saw that in Chicago. People were in line trying to get these new athletic footwear. It was crazy. But you have this innovators, early adopters, late majority, early majority, late majority, and then laggards, the people that come late to the party and they finally catch on. But yeah, you have a lot of people who are laggards, who are more conservative. What about branding? Brand. What is a brand? A name, term, design, symbol, or other feature that identifies one seller's product as as distinct from those of other sellers. Now, I read an article recently, and it was saying that branding is not those things, and that branding is telling a story. And certainly, in branding, you're certainly telling a story. And the brand name is very important part of telling that story. The brand mark or logo or trademark or whatever you want to call it, trade name, all part of this branding. The value of branding. And of course, when you talk about branding, it's tricky because you have some brands that have been around for ages, and you have those that are just coming up the pipe. But the idea that you can identify a product just by looking at it, just by looking at a logo on the front of the bottle. If this was not here, do you think I'd buy it? Say if this Fiji label were not on the bottle, would I buy it? Would I buy this one if the label was not here? No, I probably would want something with the label on it. Because what does that label do? What does that brand identity do? That brand identity associates you with something of quality, or associates that product with a company that may be very, very highly regarded. There is a ranking of the world's most valuable brands, and then I have it here. And you will see that Apple is the world's most valuable brand. I looked at another article, and sure enough, Apple is the world's most valuable brand. Facebook is up there, Coca-Cola. Brand equity. Some of you all walk around with these t-shirts on with logos. That company should be paying you to wear that t-shirt. Not you paying them for the t-shirt, but them paying you to wear the t-shirt, because you become a walking billboard. And that brand name awareness is in part because of you. Because of you, you're a marketing agent. Brand loyalty, perceived brand quality. Lots of ways to convey that through saying things like natural antioxidants. What does this say? This is kombucha. Gluten-free, caffeine-free, hypoallergenic, if you're into cosmetics. Yeah, lots of things that could make it appear that you have a top quality item by certain buzzwords. Here they have the 10 most valuable brands in the world. On this list, Google's at the top, Apple second, Microsoft, Amazon, and Facebook. In some of the lists I've seen, they have foreign companies as well. Co-branding, of course. You have a mixture of products from different companies and then they collaborate. As you can see, I have some pictures here. And one of the things about, I believe we talked about licensing before. And I was in a situation with a computer company where we had an OEM agreement and they would send us their equipment and we would put our name on it. That was a licensing agreement. And it allowed us to make a profit, and then we, of course, pay them the licensing fee, but that was the quickest way we can get products into the market. Packaging. How many times have you seen companies change the look of their packaging? This article was interesting because it talked about a very famous product. And it says, what to learn from Tropicana's packaging redesign failure. You look at the before and after. This is a much cleaner look. They changed the orientation of the letters. And they go on and they begin to talk about what happened. Here's the new packaging. They give some facts here. Then they go over the differences. They have the cap is in the shape of an orange. That's one. You don't have some of the more enduring features that we remember, such as the orange. The lid is different, as I said. The logo is different. Here, they have the idea that Tropicana is healthy because you see mother and child, mother and children, mother and children. So there were some very interesting ideas brought out in this article. But what happened was Tropicana admitted to underestimating the attachment that consumers had with this packaging in the orange and just a wholesome perception people had of Tropicana. And it's a very interesting case. And they talk about the drop of sales to 20%. And this spectacular decrease in sales represented a loss of $30 million for Tropicana because they made a few tweaks. Now, the question you may have is, let's say everybody got over the changes. Would people forgive this company for making those changes, or would they switch onto another type of brand? That's the question. Packaging functions. What's the function of a package? Well, certainly it's to transport, but it's also to preserve. It is also to inform. You know, what's on that package is going to hopefully be informative. And so you have a number of functions for packaging. I may have mentioned the mayonnaise in a plastic bag. That's how it's sold in some Latin American countries. And packaging is extremely important. So that's all I'm going to talk about today. It's been a long day for me, and I am going to cue this up tomorrow. This is about an hour long. And so make sure you take your time, and hopefully with the presentation we had Tuesday and this video and all the other material, you will be ready for our next exam, which is coming up very soon. I'll give you the date in a minute. I don't have it all memorized, probably like I should. But let's look at the schedule and see what we're facing. So our next exam is on the 17th. We will have our journal on Tuesday on branding, and our exam on the 17th, chapters 9, 11, and 12. And then we'll close out in another couple of weeks. So I hope you learned something. Make sure you're reading the book. There will be a short quiz with this, including the previous video where we watched the video on Oreo cookies, and just want to keep you honest. Now, there'll be about 5 questions, so make sure that you're prepared, and hopefully you're able to get through this video. And I will see you on next Tuesday when we have the journals. And then we have one more journal day, that's December the 3rd. And then we have our presentations during the finals period. And then we're out. Okay, so I'll see you all on next week. Make sure you check for the quiz. Get through the video, take your time, take breaks, and I'm pretty sure come the 17th, you will do well. Okay? Take care, enjoy, be safe, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.